So what's interesting about being a Christian is that we are people of the book. But it's also interesting, we live very much in this age of the video. And so we don't always read that much. And there's this interesting question, should we read? And if we should read, like how much should we read? Should we read widely? Should we just read the Bible? And I think these are all really important questions. I think the answer is yes, we should read, and yes, we should read widely. And I think you can think about this in terms of concentric circles, right? I mean, I think that we should read our scriptures primarily, and we want to study those, we want to understand the world of the scriptures, and we want to read books that help us to understand and sort of relate to what's going on in the Bible. But I also think that we should read more widely than that for a number of reasons. What's interesting, C.S. Lewis, who's one of my favorite authors, talks about the sheer pleasure of reading good stories. And he actually talked about two kinds of pleasure. He talked about the kind of pleasure that he thought was like a lesser pleasure. He called it the pleasure of excitement. And he picked on the Three Musketeers, but we can pick on more contemporary books. But he thought those were like just books that don't really develop the characters, but they have a lot of action and that's kind of fun. But he said that there is a kind of pleasure and we should enjoy books and read them for that pleasure. But he thought there was a deeper kind of pleasure. He called it the pleasure of the quest, where we enter these rich secondary worlds. And in entering those, we explore that world. We explore the characters, we explore the environment, we take it all in. And there's a kind of benefit from that. And Lewis and actually J.R. Tolkien talked about this too. And the benefits are many, right? There's this kind of heroic escape. And why is that a good thing? Well, because this world is actually difficult. And sometimes we just need to get away. But there's a kind of a heroic escape when we enter into a certain kind of secondary world that we find best in literature, right? So for some it might be Narnia. For others it's Middle-earth, and there could be many other worlds. For some it could be the world of Harry Potter or many other things. But for Tolkien, not only was there the benefit of the heroic escape, but in entering these worlds, we also found consolation, and then we found recovery. And what he meant by that is that we enter back into the primary world with basically the language he uses. We actually have our eyes, clean like the cleaning of windows. We can see the world more fresh. And we can see the world is good and gift, and we can see and appreciate the world around us. So yes, we should read, and we should read widely, and we should read different kinds of books. I've also heard it said that if we want to be interesting people, we need to have wide interests. And one of the best ways to do that is to read widely. So every year I try to read in a number of different categories. So I teach philosophy and theology, and so that's a primary area of reading for me. I love to learn about God, and I love to learn about the world around us, and so I read pretty widely in philosophy and theology. But I also read in two other categories that I think are really helpful. I read in fiction. And I also read in nonfiction, autobiographies and biographies. And I think those are important for a number of reasons. I think that we read fiction not just for the sheer joy, as Lewis talked about, but it also helps us to understand what's important in our culture. If you want to know what those in culture think is important, well then read the books that everyone else is reading. Now obviously we have to have some discernment there, right? There's some books that we ought not to read, perhaps, and that's where Christian wisdom comes in. But I do think we want to read the books that people are reading so that we understand the culture that we seek to reach. And then I also think it's helpful to read biographies because we can have exemplars that we can learn from. We can learn from those who come before us in the faith. We can learn from those who are leaders in culture. And then we can go and be like them in the ways that we ought to. So I would encourage you to read widely and to, yes, go ahead and watch those movies and stream those Netflix series, but also pick up a book and begin to explore the wonderful world of fiction and literature, and I think you'll be better off for it.